the whole choice of independent education is presumably because you want choice and you want the people who lead the schools that your children go to have choice. And I am a great advocate of the not one size fits all. The joy of British independent education is we have great diversity. We have diversity within the boarding community that is huge, let alone when you bring in the co-ed, single-sex debate. And then on top of that, of course, we have wonderful schools which actually are day schools that are single-sex or co-ed. So we've got a real mishmash, small, large, but actually the thing is choice. So I've made a choice in terms of the school that I've chosen to lead. And a part of it that I'm going to do with you is to take a minute to explain my journey and my reasoning as to why I would choose to lead a full boarding school. So first of all, you may not know what full boarding is. And I think it's quite important. You know, people have ideas. If you're not weren't a boarder yourself or don't know anybody who has children who board, there are lots of, first of all, confusions over what full boarding is in the 21st century. So first of all, it is a school where obviously the children sleep over. We try to get away from the idea of a sleepover, obviously, because otherwise we'd have mayhem. But actually, it is a school where the children are staying every night. And every night is the key thing. So the children are with us at weekends as well. But we've moved on a long way from one of my old girls who said to me as she sat down looking at the school for her daughter and said, my parents dropped me at the beginning of term and picked me up again at half term, returned me at half term and saw me again at the end of term. That isn't full boarding now. It really isn't. So I am here today. It's our exeat. That means the whole school has emptied out. Every child has gone home and we'll be having a weekend until late on Sunday evening when they return. That'll happen again in 2 weeks' time and then we'll have half term and off we go again. It's fair to say that there's stretches when we have 3 weeks when the children are with us. 2 weekends is the longest time when they are at school. But the funny thing is, from my perspective, actually we feel sometimes that we break too often. Ooh, you say, you know, I don't want to lose my child. She needs to be at home or he needs to be at home with me. Well, actually, that's why we need to look at what is so great about the boarding experience. So the first time I set foot in a boarding school, I was 22 years old. I'm not a boarder, I'm a grammar school girl. And actually, boarding was an intrigue for me, and I applied for this little school, which I saw advertised, and I thought, I'll go and have a look at that. At the same time, I was applying for large co-ed schools, actually state and independent schools at that stage. And away I went to look at it. My degree was in science, so you might think that I sat there and analysed what I saw. No, it was a completely emotional response. I was bowled over by this school, by the children first, the self-assurance and the confidence of the 11-year-olds to the 18-year-olds. I thought, gosh, they must all be fantastically able. And then I discovered that actually far from that, it was a very non-selective school. And actually, these were just children who were at ease in their environment. Also, I have to be honest, it was a fantastic setting. Boarding schools, you need space. That's my perspective anyway. You're having children, you want to give them something that maybe they haven't got at home. We have 50 acres of parkland and the children can roam. We feel that they are safe, and that's another thing. Giving them that independence while actually having a safe environment is quite a big ask in the 21st century. So there I am, taking my first job in a boarding school. And the rest is history, really, because I never looked back. I had 2 other schools which were what you might call weekly boarding schools, but predominantly day. And in the end, when I came to apply for a headship, I knew there was only one thing that I wanted, and that was a full boarding school. Because when it's done well, and I have to say, if you're thinking of boarding for your children, you have to be discerning, because boarding is variable just like any other form of education, and the choice is extraordinary. But actually you need to ask critical questions, and you really do need to do your analysis when you're looking at boarding. So the first thing I'd like to say is that really full boarding isn't always what you get, even though you think you've bought into full boarding. Full boarding does not mean leaving at Saturday lunchtime, as much as you as parents might want it. If that's what you want, weekly boarding is the option. Weekly boarding is less expensive. I mean, they're all expensive. I'll come to that at the end. But in the end, when you're thinking about your choices, I don't think it'll necessarily come down, if you're thinking of boarding, to money. So, why? Why would you drop your child off and say goodbye for 2 weeks to them? And there is a school of thought, and I meet it often, which is actually in some way those are dysfunctional parents. Let me sort of get that out in the open straight away, because I actually feel that parents who put their children in a boarding school have actually put their children first. I'm a working mother, and my husband is a working father. And for us, we weren't from a boarding background, but the choice for us would be to give our daughter an opportunity to have her time and not be under our very tight confines of, I can pick you up then, I can drop you off then, I can take you to your piano then, I can drop you off then. And actually, pre-boarding, our lives were pretty chaotic. They're still chaotic in some ways, but that's more to do with our lifestyle and both of our jobs than actually the pressure of trying to do the best for our daughter. Often it was compromise. Now again, you may say, well, I've not chosen to work and therefore I'm totally focused on my children. Well, I've got another aspect. I've got an only child. And a lot of people say only children, you know, they're doomed from the day they're born. Actually, we were determined that she wouldn't be doomed, that she would be sociable, that she'd know how to share even when she was tiny. And we worked jolly hard at that. But actually, boarding takes it to a whole new level. She has 42 sisters living cheek by jowl with her, and that's given her a sort of experience that no family can ever give. So please, in your analysis of the experience, try to think without the emotion, even though I told you I started by saying emotional response is often involved in choice, particularly in education. Think of really, what are you trying to do for your child? What do you want for them? So, what do we do that I think makes, not me, but the whole of boarding, and I am talking about the whole of full boarding, not single sex, it could be co-ed, and I don't want to go down that debate, but actually I just want to focus on the very nature of boarding. So the first key thing for me is the issue of community. So, community, you could say all schools talk about the community, the importance of the community, everybody being valued within the community. What I always say in response to that is you cannot be valued until you are known. Not known by name, but known by every aspect of you. And therefore, the joy of having a child in supper in the evening and talking to them, or seeing them in hockey practice at 7 o'clock, or walking up the drive, as I often do with girls who are going to a netball practice or whatever it is, and just chatting about the day. That's when you gain knowledge of children. So I will be controversial and say that real knowledge, as far as children are concerned, you know yourselves, requires a huge investment of time. And actually having the luxury of that time is what we have in boarding. You also have to have committed staff, very well trained staff. They have to be absolutely in line with the thinking of every moment in boarding counts. Whatever they're doing, we're making the most of it. So the community, here they are going about their daily business. Here they are in a break time, going to a shop, going in for a break, going perhaps to learning support, going to the music school, busying about. The only thing is that actually is after the end of the school day. It's not actually 12 o'clock, lunchtime. You're saying, well, they're still in their uniform. Yeah, do you know what? Girls and boys, I'm sure, in a boarding environment, they're pretty relaxed. They're not concerned about, gosh, I better go and put on something that actually is making a statement, because you know what, we're all the same, we're all here together. That's the community aspect of full boarding. Girls out of uniform are invariably sixth formers. In most schools now, there will be no uniform for sixth form. So there you are, just going on as part of the community. But what does that mean? Well, here we are, some 11-year-olds having their breakfast together with their house mistress who's eating with them, and a lovely one of our team behind helping provide that. In a boarding school, the community is very definitely the whole. In many schools, there is a sort of focus on the teachers and the children. In our community, the girls know the cleaners, they know the kitchen staff, they know this lady by name. That actually adds to them as people, but also the strength of the community. So it is very definitely a team. We have bizarre traditions, as all possibly schools and boarding schools certainly have. And on Monday, we have what's called school birthday. And actually, in the evening, we have a dinner. And there will be anybody, from the technicians, from the science labs, to the lovely lady who mixes up all the clay for 3D, all sitting down for supper, if they wish to. If they don't wish to, they don't have to. All the academic staff will be there because they see that as part of community life. In that community, they really feel that they have the space to explore their friendships. They have swings. These are only 11 years old. They've got swings outside their boarding house. They've got a garden outside their boarding house. And they're getting on with each other. The friendships built in boarding are second to none. Why? You've had your breakfast with them. You've slept next to them. You've actually got up and gone out to play with them. You've done your laundry together. Most of us had that experience at university for the first time. But actually, they've had it from 11 years old. And what my husband and I, who are both from very different schools, observed when we first arrived at my school was actually how supportive the girls are of each other. They are genuinely caring and supportive. You're saying, well, they're perfect then. No, they're actually quite naughty and feisty, and I'd be disappointed if they weren't at the appropriate ages. But at the same time, they know each other. They understand each other. And actually the luxury of my school is they're not all one type. So they weren't selected on their intellect. We are selective, but we select for a range of reasons. And so it makes a very tight, very warm community. So there they are, getting on with what they do. Sixth formers cooking whatever they want to cook. The sixth formers could cook every meal if they chose to. They don't, actually, because they can, they don't want to. So actually they will eat in the school dining room, but here they are cooking up sort of tea, coffee, whatever. Younger girls, 11 years old, sort of in their common room, and then a sixth former in her study. So the downside people always say to me is, they come, they look around, this is fantastic. Look at this space, look at this environment, but surely your children are not prepared for the real world. Tight community, supportive, but the real world isn't like that. Here, it isn't. And every school, not just a boarding school, has a duty to prepare their children for the real world. So for us, we're driven by our school motto, which has been there for 165 years, which is, I have that I may give. But what a phenomenal, in Latin obviously, what a phenomenal motto, because actually it pushes us out all the time. So here we are in a local primary school, teaching modern foreign languages. Our girls, these are upper sixth girls, have been through a training program, a recognised training program, so they can get out into the community and offer specific skills that maybe teachers in that school don't have. In this particular case, if French is being offered. We also offer German and Spanish in local schools. So in the community, recognizing very different environments from their own. But we go one step further because we would like them all to recognize that we live in a global society and that actually the world is very different. We're in Banbury. Banbury is on the edge of the Cotswolds. The Cotswolds is beautiful. Sorry if you live in Banbury, it's not. And actually what our job is, alerting them alerting them to the huge unemployment in Banbury, making them aware of the children in those schools, but actually showing them the next phase. So all the boarding schools that I know have linked schools overseas. We have linked projects because they're not always schools. We have 3 projects, one of which is, 2 of which are schools, and 1 is an orphanage. And we send 25 of our sixth formers every year to those locations. Why? Because the bubble effect that we say potentially of living in a very tight community has to be burst regularly. And here they are, some typical girls in Chennai, in India, actually working with the children, 9-day experience, that's all they have. We have to do it in a tight time frame. They don't miss any school, obviously, to do it. And they have everything else to fit in just like everybody else. So getting out into the community is very important. I realise I can't help myself, I can't stop. So there they are. So let me do my whole second point very quickly. I can't believe I've spoken for that long. My poor pupils, can you imagine? Of course I'm Welsh, I didn't mention that. Should have been a preacher. Second point, of course, community. Burst that bubble, get them out there. The second one is opportunity. People are constrained the whole time. The school day, the school bus, the school run. Imagine 24 hours a day. So what can we do? Our curriculum is broader than anything you could possibly imagine. I still have the luxury, and I'm going to show you, here's drama, swimming. Look, a girl doing cookery. I'm not afraid to put that up there. My school's an academic school, but actually my girls can cook. And it's not because they're girls that I think they need to cook. I wish I had boys, I'd teach them too. But actually, the point is we've got time. Saturday morning, all our third years do a basic cookery certificate over a period of a year. So by the time every girl's been through the school, they've all done a basic qualification. Why? It's a life skill. Why doesn't it happen in other schools? They haven't got the time. When would they do that? So our curriculum is hugely broad. But also, we have the time in the evenings to really centre on those life skills like debating. We have huge success in Model United Nations where they debate at international sort of country level on really serious issues. Time, hours go into these things. But of course, they also have the luxury. I have to say, that's not one of my labs. That's Oxford University. I don't want anybody to think my labs are sort of the size that is. But actually, they have the luxury as well of extra time with their work, with teachers available, peers available, and I don't mean for copying, but I mean for peer review and peer help, which actually is a very, very strong way of learning. And of course, sport. The whole independent sector shouts about its sport. Hockey practice at 8 o'clock at night, as well as at 1 o'clock or 4 o'clock, endless time. And then the weekend programme, which is broad and extensive. Here we are in the Gower, here we are in Cheddar, here we are on the Y, doing Gold D of E. Actually, all those things take place within school time. We never fill that time, we extend all the time. And finally, education's like climbing a mountain. For teachers, for pupils. Here mine on top of course, Snowdon. They're dressed as cows, in case you're wondering why they're all in black and white. It was a sponsored event, but again, all our girls climb that mountain during the time they're at school. We're big believers in physical challenge, but it's more than that. It's actually about really them challenging themselves all the time. So my challenge to you is to open your mind to boarding. The only downside, and I have to say there is a massive downside, it's the cost. We're all aware of that, and we're all battling to keep costs down. But what I would say to you is that in the last 10 years, boarding schools, like every other independent school, but boarding schools particularly, have searched their souls and now are offering, my school offers 5% of total income as full bursaries to children. Why? Because the government said? No, because a grammar school girl from South Wales feels, I wish I'd had this. And actually, there should be more opportunities for people to take up full boarding.